So I'm going to be sharing to you about Flipgrid. So you've known me from our workshop before or webinar before. So I teach physical education in De La Salle Sobel, and I've shared about PE metrics. Now this afternoon, I'm sharing all about Flipgrid. So our goals for this afternoon are the following. So I hope that you could get into and see how will Flipgrid help you deliver our distance learning lessons. So first, in a browser. So you can access Flipgrid in a browser or via an application. But as an educator, you will always have to go through the browser. So when you go into the browser, this is how it looks like. So you have to type in just type in flipgrid.com, and then you will be led to this page. So as an educator, if you're already a part of Flipgrid, you can log in, or you can either sign up if it's your first time. So later on, I'm gonna let you go through how to sign up to Flipgrid. Now let's move on to how it looks like when you're signed up or signed in as or logged in as an educator. So this is how it looks like. Notice that I pointed an arrow to my name because that's where you'll find all your profile accounts. And then notice also there's an encircled set of words, Getting Started Guide. Once you click that, a PDF file of how to Flipgrid or how to use Flipgrid will be downloaded or will be opened in the window. So you will get a new copy. You can download that one for your personal use or for your personal reference. Okay, and now we move on to our first letter. So Flipgrid, I'm going to let you go through each letter of Flipgrid, talking about how it is in a learning setup. So let's start with letter F. You have to form positive relationships with your students. We all know and we all realize that building relationships with our student is the foundation of learning. If you or your students are not able to connect to each other, learning will become challenging. So it will be hard for your students to focus, to get into, to engage. Hi, Miss Tony. Welcome. So you're just in time. I've started with letter F. So form positive relationships with your students because we have to get to know our students. Even if we are on a distance learning setup this school year, we still have to find ways to get to know them. And one way to get to know our students is through Flipgrid, although there are many ways to get to know our students. So if your school is into other platforms of getting to know your students, go ahead, use it. But Flipgrid is another way of using getting to know your students. So that's why if you noticed in the picture, it says here, hello. So that means this is a part of the Flipgrid where I created so my students can say hello to me. Notice I just wrote there, share a fun fact about yourself, because it has nothing to do with learning yet. It has something to do with setting up the learning environment, albeit virtual. Okay? Then, once we get to know our students, we can now then move to the next step. But then, how can we form and develop relationships with our students? There are many ways. I'm sure you have tons of ideas on how to form relationships with our students. So once we formed our relationship with our students, positive at that, because we needed that in this time of pandemic, we look out for learning opportunities. Okay, so we can only do this, giving learning opportunities for our students, if we were able to establish relationships. So in one of my webinar sessions, now, not even a trend, but a suggestion that we practice Maslow first before Bloom. So we get into the social emotional needs of our students before we introduce concepts or skills. So when we look out for learning opportunities, so there are many ways to look out for learning opportunities. It can either be through correspondence, emails, messages. Through Flipgrid, we can enhance, or we can support learning opportunities when they give their feedback or their responses on the videos to you. So how can you then look for learning opportunities? So when you're reviewing your student videos, look for what skill development can they still work on, and look for the goals that they have to work on too, because these are the most important part of our engagement with students. Our engagement has to be meaningful to them, as I've mentioned in our webinar last time. But most of all, when we look for learning opportunities, do not forget character building. We have to instill values, especially at this time. They have to understand the importance of being responsible citizen, responsible individual. Even if they are still students, they can still contribute to our community, and their contribution is a big help. Now, we can engage our students in different learning opportunities in what, or regardless of what platform your school or you as a teacher are using. Let's move on to the next. Am I making sense to you, teachers? Okay, now for letter I, the third letter, include interests of your students. Of course, we all know that when our students are interested in the activities that we prepared or gave them or provide for them, then chances are there is a high chance of, or high participation. So an increased engagement in their participation to our class activities. So whether they like running, dancing, sports, reading, drawing, speaking, whatever is their interest or whatever takes them, we have to anchor into that interest, or hook into that interest, so that when we give them tasks or activities, they'll be able to do it with passion, something like that. Okay, so moving on, participation is the key. So when we form relationships, when we open them up to them, we have to make sure they are participating, especially now that it's on a distance learning style. So how do we make them, how do we make sure that it's active? How do we make sure that they're engaged? So their Flipgrid is one way of ensuring that the kids or our students are active and engaged. Later on at the part of this webinar, we will uh, go through specific ways on how we can let our students participate actively and are engaged. So let's move on to letter G. Get your students moving. So there are many ways to move. Now these days, or in our previous webinar, we talked about TikTok. Now through Flipgrid, you can post challenges, you can post games, you can post exercises. So in the games, like what we've talked before, you can adapt traditional games into a physical education setup. You can have the tic-tac-toe, you can have the station rotation, but in a four-corner style, you can have exercise challenges and a lot more. So some of the references are posted already in Sharps and Flats, so just check it out after the session. Then this is the most important in Flipgrid. You have to respond to students' video responses. So in Flipgrid, when you create a task or assign a task to students, they are required or encouraged to participate by recording a short video of their response to your task. For example, would you rather challenge exercise? Would you rather do jumping jacks or would you rather do burpees? So something like that. So your students will choose from any of those, then they respond. So as a teacher, you can respond or give feedback through a rubric. Here, I will show you later how it looks like in Flipgrid. Through a video, present your own video, and then through a comment. So you have three options. You just choose which one you're most comfortable and then go ahead and use it. Then this is how it looks like on a Flipgrid. So this was my student before. Our lesson was about badminton and he was trying to show me how to do a proper forehand service. So there are four ways actually to respond. So I have here on the very top the video. This one is the grading rubric, which can be customized according to the criteria that you want to set. And the last one is a comment. Okay, so comment, generally it's all about words. And then notice a message icon here that means it's a reply. So classmates, teachers can reply to a student video. So you just have to make sure that your policy in the classroom, when they use Flipgrid, it's clear. They know what are the acceptable behaviors and acceptable videos and not. Okay, so also to protect yourself. Then we move on to letter I. Integrate for C's. So in today's education, we are encouraged to integrate 21st century skills. Why? Because the kind of environment our students have or working or community or society encourages a lot of communication, a lot of collaboration, critical thinking, and creativity. And whether you use Flipgrid or any other platform, these four C's are supported. So for example, because in Flipgrid, we are asking our students to communicate their thoughts, ideas, to share what they know about, how they understand the concepts, how to perform a skill. So definitely communication is encouraged or supported. not just with the student, but with student and the teacher. Also, collaboration. When students work together, so in a distance learning setup, collaboration, that means you as a teacher will have to assign your students on how to collaborate with someone. When they create a video, respond to a reply to a classmate, and then put together a particular skill, then you are giving a chance for your students to collaborate. Critical thinking. When you post a video of a skill and then students will try to critique a particular skill, how it's being performed, how can it be improved, things like that. So when you utilize Flipgrid in your class, you are not just only giving engaging activities to your students, but also you're giving them the opportunity to practice the 4 C's. Creativity. Your students have a voice and choice in Flipgrid, so they can either use a whiteboard only, or they can use labels, or just simply a video or photos. It's it's a way of practicing how they would want to convey their understanding of concepts or skills that you are teaching. Let's move on to our next slide, which is developing a growth mindset. So in this time of pandemic, everyone is overwhelmed with preparations, what's going to happen, how can we ensure that the learning will happen with our students even if we are on a distance setup. So instill a growth mindset. Even for us teachers, we have to make room for a growth mindset, because not all of the activities that we will prepare will be uh, engaging, depending on the setup of our students. So some of us, most of our students may not have an internet. So how can we support their learning even if they don't have an internet? So we have to first make them realize that failing is part of learning. It's only a first attempt in learning. So how then can we make sure that they don't stop at first attempt, that they move on, that they keep on prodding until they achieve their the set goals that we have, that we as teachers set for them. Okay. So for now, we are done with all the letters of Flipgrid. So I'm not sure if everyone here can try as a student. So we will now be discovering how Flipgrid is, how it is used as a student and as a teacher. So we will use it first as a teacher. So before you experience it, sorry, as a student, I mean, I'll be on a teacher mode and you are all my students. So before we go through being a student, so just some basic Flipgrid lingo. On to the next slide. So this is how it looks like to you. So you have 2 codes. Don't get confused. A grid code is for your community, and then a topic code that's inside the grid code. So you can choose to share a grid code encircled there. Here, this is your grid code. So if you have a lot of topic inside this grid, your students will see them. But if you want to direct your students to just the topic, then you have to share the topic code, this one. Okay? Okay, now as a student, I'm not sure if you can join in. If you have another device, you can go to the browser. As a student, you will see there when you enter the flip code is in the grid, you will see some responses already, because in my another webinar session, other teachers responded to this grid. So this is how it looks like. So there's two ways to enter a flip code, to your upper left or to the bottom part of the screen. Just type in PE flip grid. Then you will be directed to the grid. Okay, can I see a comment if you are trying in the Flipgrid into the browser? Yes? All right. Okay. If you're not ready to join in as a student, then I'll proceed to this. So as a teacher, you have to sign up using this link. And then you will have to use your Gmail account or your Microsoft account, whichever works for you. Go ahead and sign up. Then once you've signed up, you will be directed to grids. So I've mentioned grids already. You have 3 community types. You can use a school email, student ID list, or PLC and community. When it's a school email, this is how your grid looks like when you're creating it. So notice this one, you have to name it, so it's customized also. Then choose from the 3, school email, student ID, or educator learning community. Then this is what I've been talking about a while ago. Flip code can be customized. So it's up to you, how do you want to customize your grid code. Then after the grid, you will be directed to this page, the topic. So when you create a new topic, make sure the title is specific and you have to provide prompts, like what I've shown a while ago. So prompts will be very, very helpful for your students because that guides them in their task that they have to accomplish. Next, do's and don'ts. You have to read Flipgrid's privacy and terms of use. And then most of all, you have to follow your school policy. So you have to make sure that Flipgrid is approved by your data privacy officer or office. And then make sure your students' videos are safe and protected. So do comply with any student request to take down Flipgrid content. For example, your student uploaded a video. Because they cannot delete it on their own, you will have to be the one to delete it for them through your educator dashboard. So most of all, we all know this, don't share student information outside the classroom or school. Now, for additional information, so there are many ways to use Flipgrid in our classroom. So here's a link on the 50 plus ways to use Flipgrid in our classes. And then another way is if you're into physical education like me, so you can use Flipgrid for a virtual sports day challenge. So this Flipgrid virtual sports day challenge was adopted from a friend in Twitter. So see, the games are adapted. These are simple games which can be applicable right now in a distance learning setup when we don't know if our students have enough space to play, and with those suggested games in this sports day challenge, it can be done at home. Another way to flip, reading logs. So if you're a reading teacher, you can Flipgrid virtual, oops, sorry for the word, virtual reading log, so your students can read a book, then share something about it, or whatever skill you're after in reading. It doesn't have to be in the picture. Another way, whether you're from upper elementary or lower elementary, these are still applicable. Obstacle courses. Look at, if you can see in the photo, all the materials used are available at home. So, like what I've mentioned in the previous webinar, safe, practical, and students can relate on, or relevant. So this can be an indoor activity or outdoor depending on the reality of your students. And the next one, ways to Flipgrid in different subjects. So if you're a science teacher, you can maybe ask your students to, you as a teacher first, on a lens of a teacher. So you can demonstrate how to conduct a simple experiment. So to give specific steps to your students. That's another way. Second, if you're in the lower grades and you're practicing senses, observing, analyzing, things like that. So if you're observing plants, insects, animals, so Flipgrid is the perfect way for your students to record their responses and how they understand animals, their habitats, things like that. Then next, history. Of course, you can do a virtual field trip, okay? So, but of course, not going out, not allowed. Safety first. So, or students can share a cultural aspect or a culture that they are aware of or they want to know more about, that for history, or a representation of latitude and longitude. And then for reading, I've shared one already, reading logs. They can also do book talks, read aloud with a parent, with a family member, or anyone whom they are with at home. So there are many possible ways to use Flipgrid, not just in PE, but in other subjects as well. So in music, definitely they can record their music performance, either singing, playing an instrument, or performing a rhythm pattern, whatever it is, whatever skill you are requiring of your kids, think of the many possible ways how they can respond through Flipgrid. Art. So last term, my student was absent for the whole term due to sickness. So I've used Flipgrid for him to show me the skill that I'm trying to assess in class, and he was able to show it to me through Flipgrid. And then the most, well, in my school, Filipino subject is the most not wanted subject because most of our students find it challenging to speak the language. So how can we use Flipgrid to encourage our students to speak in Filipino? Now, if your reality is different from mine, yours is that your students need to practice their English language, then the same thing. So Flipgrid can help them, express themselves in whatever language or they are comfortable with, or whatever language we want them to, as long as it follows your target skills for that week or your learning targets. For math, definitely very helpful. So when you solve complex or simple problems, whatever it is, Flipgrid can help show you that your students have understood the steps when they record it and when you want it, or when you want to demonstrate how to solve a certain problem. So later on I will show you the different parts of Flipgrid, and there's a whiteboard there where you can use to record yourself while explaining when you're solving a problem. Okay? Now, Flipgrid for teachers and students. You can demonstrate a skill. You can read a story. I've mentioned all of this already. You can connect with your students. You can discuss and clarify important points in your units. There's community collaboration, and you can show steps in solving a problem. There are many more ways. These are just the ones I've mentioned specifically, and which I've practiced in my school when I'm using Flipgrid. Okay, so as a PE teacher, make sure we give a correct dose of physical education for our students, even if it's on a distance learning setup. So when we let our students get active, we activate the release of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin, and endorphins. I will not go through each of the benefits of each one, as you can read them by yourself. You can go back to this if you forget, like what I do sometimes. And then I want to hear your feedback. So let's flip your feedback. So whether you can give your feedback now or at a later time, it's fine by me. The flip code is sharps and flats, and you'll be directed to the topic with the prompt. So go to Flipgrid, then enter the sharps and flats code, and you'll be directed to the grid. Then click on the topic, and then that's where you respond. How do you respond? Just click the camera, the green camera. All right, things to remember. When first introducing Flipgrid to your students, it is recommended to start simple to help them become familiar with the platform and speaking up in front of the camera and one another. So do not overwhelm your students, even yourself. Do not overwhelm. So if you're trying Flipgrid, choose one aspect first. Do you want to use the word part only, the whiteboard part, or just simply the camera? It's up to you. Just make sure you take things lightly, but don't forget the goal of why you're using Flipgrid. Okay, so that's the most important thing, because technology will never replace great teachers, but technology in the hands of great teachers can be transformational. So it doesn't matter what type of technology you're using, it's the way you use technology that can be transformational for yourself and for your students' learning experiences. All right, a little reminder from the Flipgrid team. Using Flipgrid isn't about recording videos. It's about learning that is social, personal, can happen anywhere and anytime. It's about making connections. It's deep exploration and promotes that everyone is a teacher and everyone is a learner. So additional information if you want to know more about Flipgrid. So if you're into Twitter, use @Flipgrid to connect with them, or through their browser. And I've posted a link for the drive, although when you open your educator dashboard, you'll see that there also. Lastly, we would want you to connect with us. So please go and visit Sharps and Flats Ed. If you are with us already, chances are, please recommend us to your colleagues, co-teachers, co-workers, friends. Thank you for that. So this is the page and this is the group. This is a private group. This is where we post resources that can maybe help you in your lessons, depending on what subjects you're teaching. And if you want to connect with me, these are my details, or you can just simply go to Sharps and Flats. So that's all, everyone, this afternoon. This is Miss Rizza from Sharps and Flats Ed. Please always remember to focus on what matters. Thank you. Do you have any questions, clarifications, things I can help you with?